rain came down hard that night. Kim Ji wasn't supposed to be by the window. His physiotherapist had a whole list of things he wasn't supposed to do. He'd stopped reading the list. He sat in the dark of his penthouse, no lights, no music, screens off, which was how his head of security knew something was wrong before he even checked the cameras. Kim Ji without screens was Kim Ji at war with himself. The acquisition could wait. Everything could wait. He was watching her. Ria was in the courtyard below, 30 floors down, in the full rain. No umbrella. She wasn't running for cover. She wasn't on a phone call. She was standing in front of the fountain with her face tilted up and her eyes closed, letting the rain hit her like it owed her something. Kim Ji leaned forward slightly. "Who does that?" His assistant Sue knocked twice and entered. "Sir, the Longbridge lawyers need a response by." "Who let her out there?" Sue blinked, followed his gaze to the window. "Sir, my wife." The word still sat strange in his mouth. Foreign, like a business term from an industry he hadn't studied yet. "It's raining." "Yes, sir, it is." "Send someone to bring her in." Sue hesitated 1 second too long. "Is there a problem?" Sue cleared his throat. "She told security to go back inside. Said she'd come in when she was ready." Kim Ji said nothing. "She told security to go back inside." He looked back with rapt attention through the glass. Ria hadn't moved. "Oh my God! Look at her sexy curves," he said in his mind. Her dress was completely soaked now, her natural hair pulled back, and she had her arms slightly open at her sides. Not dramatic, not performing, just receiving something. Like the rain was a conversation she'd been trying to finish all day. He had lived in this penthouse for 3 years. He had watched the courtyard through this window on hundreds of rainy nights. It had never looked like that before. The Longbridge response. Kim Ji pulled his chair back from the window slowly. "Tell them 48 hours. They said tonight was the deadline, and I said 48 hours. His voice didn't rise. It never rose. "If they walk, they walk. We'll buy them cheaper in 6 months when their board panics." Sue nodded quickly and left. Kim Ji didn't go back to his screens. He stayed at the window. Ria finally opened her eyes, looked down at herself. Soaked through, shoes ruined probably. And then she did something he hadn't expected. She laughed. Not a polite laugh. A real one. Shoulders moving, hand over her mouth, laughing at herself. Alone, in the rain, like she just remembered a joke from earlier in the day and it had finally caught up with her. Kim Ji's jaw tightened. He turned his chair away from the window. "Don't." But the image stayed. Kim Ji finally letting himself watch her. Then Yujin shatters it. The threat doesn't just endanger Ria. It interrupts him. He turned away from the window, but he didn't turn off the camera feed. He told himself it was security. He told himself a lot of things. If you already know this man is lying to himself, drop it in the comments. And if you've ever laughed alone in the rain because the feeling was too big for inside, this story was written for you. Follow, because the night he stops turning away, you do not want to miss that. It had become a thing he did without deciding to. Watch her. Not obviously. Not the way men in his position watched things they wanted, openly entitled, certain of the outcome. Kim Ji watched Ria the way you watch something you haven't named yet. From a distance. Through glass. With the screens off and the room dark so nobody could see his face doing whatever it was his face was doing. This morning she was in the East Garden. She had a coffee she wasn't drinking. A book open on her knee that she wasn't reading. She was watching a bird. Just a bird, ordinary, small, that had landed on the low wall beside her. She didn't move toward it, didn't reach for her phone to photograph it. She just watched it the same way he watched her, like it was enough, just to see it. Kim Ji hadn't moved from his window in 11 minutes. His physiotherapist had a name for what happened when he stayed still too long. He had a different name for it. He called it the only honest thing he did anymore. The bird flew. Ria looked up, not after it, not tracking where it went. She looked up at the sky it had disappeared into, and something in her face settled. Quietly, The way a decision looks when it's already been made and the person has just caught up to it. Kim Ji's hand tightened on the wheel of his chair. Don't name it. The door behind him opened without a knock. He knew before he turned. Only one person in 11 years had walked through doors without knocking and survived it. You look well. Shin Yujin's voice was the same, low, precise. A scalpel dressed as a compliment. She stopped beside him at the window, close enough that it was intentional. She followed his eyeline down to the garden without being invited to. Is that her? Kim Ji said nothing. She's pretty. Yujin tilted her head slightly. In an unexpected way. What do you want, Yujin? Director Choi thought it would be good for us to reconnect. Given the Hansei merger, she finally looked away from the garden. Looked at him. Given everything, Director Choi doesn't speak for this office. No, she smiled. Not warmly. You do. You always did. She glanced back down. Ria had closed her book. Was standing now, stretching, unaware, unbothered, entirely outside this moment happening 30 floors above her. She doesn't know this world, Ji. Not really. You can see it from up here. Kim Ji turned his chair from the window, not away from Yujin, away from the view, so he would stop looking. Sue will show you out. I'm trying to help you. You're trying to help yourself. His voice didn't rise. It never rose. Those two things stopped overlapping a long time ago. Yujin held his gaze one beat longer than necessary. Then she straightened, smoothed her coat. She's going to get hurt in your world, Kim Ji. Quiet, certain. The worst kind of warning, the kind that sounds like care. You know that. She left. The room was silent again. Kim Ji stayed facing away from the window for a long time. Then slowly he turned back. The east garden was empty. Ria was gone. 3 months. Ria had been living in his home for 3 months and Kim Ji had spoken to her a total of. She had counted because counting was the thing she did when feelings got too loud, 41 sentences. Not conversations. Sentences. The kitchen closes at 9. Don't schedule anything on my floor without Sue. You left the terrace door open again. 41 sentences in 92 days. She had done the math on that too. She had time. She had a lot of time in a home that had never once decided she belonged in it. Tonight she had made dinner. Not because she expected him to eat it. Not because she believed, after 92 days, that a meal was going to move something that hadn't moved. She made dinner because she was hungry and the kitchen was vast and silence fills space differently when your hands are doing something. She set one plate. She sat down. She ate alone. The food was good. She knew it was good. She had learned to cook from a woman who treated every meal like an argument worth winning. And she ate slowly, deliberately, the way you eat when you are teaching yourself that you are enough company. She was almost done when she heard the front door. Kim Ji came through the entrance without looking toward the kitchen. He never looked toward the kitchen. In 3 months he had developed a precise, almost architectural route through his own home that managed to exclude every room she was likely to be in. She had noticed. She hadn't decided yet what to do with the noticing. He stopped. He had smelled it. She watched him. She could see him from her seat, just the edge of him in the corridor, his shoulders, the stillness that moved through him when something registered that he hadn't prepared for. He didn't turn around. He went to his study. The door closed. Ria looked at her plate, looked at the pot on the stove, enough for 2 because she had made enough for 2, because some habits survive longer than the hope that built them. She covered it, left it on the stove, went to her room. At 1 a.m. she couldn't sleep. This was not new. Sleep in this home came late and left early, like a guest who had never been made comfortable. She got up quietly, walked to the kitchen for water and stopped in the doorway. The pot was on the counter. Not on the stove. On the counter, moved because someone had lifted the lid. Because someone had stood in this kitchen at some point between 10 and now and looked at what she had left behind. The serving spoon was in the sink. Ria stood very still in the dark. He had eaten. Not at the table. Not with her. Alone in the dark, but he had eaten. He had eaten what she made and returned to his side of the house like it hadn't happened. like she hadn't happened. She filled her glass, went back to her room, lay in the dark with her eyes open and her chest doing something she didn't have words for yet. On the other side of the house, Kim Ji sat with the lights off and an empty bowl on his desk. The food had been extraordinary. He did not intend to mention it. Don't. But the taste stayed. She didn't mention the bowl. That was the thing that stayed with him. Most people, every person Kim Ji had ever allowed into his orbit would have mentioned it, would have built something from it. Conversation. A soft smile over breakfast. A gentle "I noticed you tried the food" design to open a door he hadn't offered to unlock. Rhea said nothing. She came to breakfast the next morning with a case file open on the table beside her coffee. Reading, underlining, completely inside her own world. She looked up when he entered, gave him the same nod she always gave him. Not warm, not cold, just honest, and went back to her file. He went to his side of the kitchen. The silence between them was the same as always. Except it wasn't. He knew it wasn't and he didn't know what to do with that knowing, so he did what he always did. He worked. He pulled up the morning reports on his tablet and read them with the focus that had made him dangerous in every boardroom he had ever entered. He read the same paragraph 4 times. At 10 o'clock, Sue called. "Sir, the Hansei legal team is here. Their lead counsel is requesting Miss." A pause, the careful kind. Mrs. Kim's presence in the meeting. Kim Ji looked up from his desk. Why? The land rights clause. It crosses into international property law. Their team flagged it overnight. Another pause. They said they need someone who understands both Korean commercial law and international property jurisdiction. Simultaneously, Kim Ji said nothing for a moment. Send her in. Rhea walked into the boardroom like she had been there before. Not the room, she had never been in this room. But the atmosphere, the particular combination of expensive suits and thinly veiled condescension that filled rooms like this like weather. She had grown up navigating it. She had learned early that rooms like this expected her to shrink and that the most devastating thing she could do was simply not. She sat down, opened her notes. The Hansei lead counsel, a man who had been practicing law for longer than Rhea had been alive and whose expression said he knew it, glanced at her once and then looked back at Kim Ji. With respect, we were expecting your senior legal advisor. You have her, Kim Ji said flatly. The man's expression did something brief and unconvinced. He slid a document across the table. Article 7, the Land Rights Reversion Clause. Our position is that under Korean commercial statute, it supersedes the international agreement entirely. Rhea looked at the document. She didn't pick it up immediately. She read it where it lay, the way you read something when you already know what it's going to say and you're simply confirming it. Then she looked up. Article 7 would supersede the international agreement. She paused. If the land had been registered under commercial statute in the first instance. It wasn't. It was registered under residential jurisdiction in 2019, which means the international framework doesn't just apply, it takes precedence. Your entire position rests on a registration classification your own client changed 3 years ago. Silence. The lead counsel looked at the document. Back at her. That registration is on page 41 of the annexure your team submitted this morning. Rhea turned her notepad toward him. She had found it before the meeting started. Had noted the page number, the clause reference, the date. All of it. I can wait while you check. She waited. He checked. Kim Ji watched her from the head of the table. He had seen good lawyers before. He had built a company on surrounding himself with the best ones. He knew what competence looked like in a room, the particular stillness of someone who isn't performing, who isn't trying to impress, who is simply operating at the level they actually exist at. Rhea was not trying to impress anyone. That was what made it impressive. The lead counsel closed the annexure, straightened his jacket, looked at Rhea with an expression that had quietly, without announcement, rearranged itself into something that looked almost like respect. We'll need to reassess our position. Take the time you need, Rhea said. The meeting ended 40 minutes later. In the corridor afterward, Sue fell into step beside Kim Ji. tablet in hand, already moving to the next thing. The Hansei team want to reschedule for Thursday. Their council needs to. Ria. Sue stopped. Kim Ji had already moved past him. Was wheeling toward the elevator. Didn't turn around. Make sure she's in every legal meeting going forward. Sue blinked. Wrote it down. Yes, sir. The elevator closed. Inside it, Kim Ji faced his own reflection in the steel door, something he usually avoided, and stayed with it for exactly the duration of the ride. She had found the clause before the meeting started. Before anyone had told her what the meeting was about. He hadn't asked how. He didn't intend to. But on the other side of the building, Ria was walking back to her office with her notes under her arm and her face giving nothing away. And somewhere beneath the surface of a man who had decided 3 months ago that she was nothing, something was shifting. Quietly, without permission. Don't. He watched her dismantle that entire room in silence, then gave one quiet order to Sue. What does Kim Ji already know about Ria that he hasn't told anyone? He found it on a Wednesday, not looking for it. That was the part that stayed with him, that he hadn't gone looking. He had asked Sue to pull the background brief on the international property case, and Sue had sent the wrong folder. Simple. Administrative. The kind of mistake that happened once every 2 years in this office because Kim Ji ran a team that didn't make mistakes, and when they did it was always small and always correctable. Except this one. He opened the folder. And there was Ria. Not a legal document. Not case notes. A profile, thorough, private, the kind that costs money to compile and more money to keep quiet. Someone had commissioned it before the marriage. Had known things about her that Kim Ji had never been told. Had known and said nothing. He read it slowly. Once. The girl who grew up moving between 3 countries because her mother followed work and her father followed nothing. Who put herself through law school on a scholarship she had competed for against 400 other applicants and won by 9 points. Who had passed the international bar examination on her first attempt. Something less than 12% of candidates managed. Who had turned down 2 positions at firms that would have made her career before she was 30. Who had, 14 months ago, witnessed a road accident. Filed a statement with a private investigator. And then gone very, very quiet. Kim Ji stopped reading. He looked at the date of the witness statement. Looked at it for a long time. 14 months ago was 3 months before their marriage was arranged. 8 months before he had been told, by the man who was supposed to be his most trusted board director, that the match had been selected carefully. That she was suitable, uncomplicated, that she would be easy to manage. Easy to manage. He closed the folder, opened it again. The witness statement reference was 1 line. No details, just the case number. And Kim Ji knew every case number connected to that night the way a man knows the address of the place he lost everything. It was his case number. She had been there. He didn't call for Sue. Didn't call anyone. He sat in his study with the lights on, which was unusual. He preferred the dark, had preferred it since the accident, since the particular cruelty of fluorescent hospital lighting had rewritten something in him about brightness, and he sat with what he knew. She had been there that night. She had filed a witness statement. And then someone had arranged for her to be in his home. The anger came quietly. That was how his anger always came. Not loud, not sudden, but the way a tide comes in. Steady. Inevitable. Filling every available space until there was no room left for anything else. She was not here by accident. She had never been here by accident. And he had let her. He stopped that thought. Pressed it flat. Ria found the photograph at 11 o'clock that night. She hadn't been looking for it either. She had been returning a book to the shelf in the corridor. One of his, she had borrowed it 3 weeks ago without asking, had left a note in its place that said borrowed this, will return, because she refused to be the kind of person who took things without acknowledgement even in a home where nobody was watching. And the photograph had been pressed between the pages she was using as a bookmark. Old. Printed on real paper the way people used to print photographs when they believed moments deserved to be held. Kim Ji. Before. Standing. Both feet on the ground, weight easy on his legs, the particular posture of a man who has never had to think about how he occupies space. He was laughing, really laughing, Not the controlled, almost smile she had catalogued over 92 days, but something unguarded and real. His whole face open in a way she had never seen. He looked like someone she hadn't met yet. She stood in the corridor for a long time, holding his laughter in her hands. This was who he had been. Before the accident. Before the chair. Before whatever had happened to him that night had taken this version of him and replaced it with silence and control and a hate so disciplined it had started to feel like architecture. She understood something then. Not an excuse. Not a reason to absorb what he aimed at her. But something that landed differently than understanding usually did. Lower, somewhere closer to the chest. He didn't hate her. He hated that she was here to see what he had become. She placed the photograph back between the pages. Put the book back on the shelf. Walked to her room. Lay in the dark. On the other side of the house, Kim Ji sat at his desk with a folder he should have been sent 2 years ago, and a question he couldn't ask without confirming that everything he thought he controlled had been decided for him by someone else. He knew she was still awake. He didn't know how he knew. He picked up his phone. Put it down. Picked it up again. Stared at her name on his contact list. Ria, just her name, no title. Sue had entered it the day of the marriage, and Kim Ji had never changed it and had never examined why he hadn't changed it. He put the phone down. The question sat in the room between them, through walls, through corridor, through 92 days of carefully constructed distance. Were you there that night? He didn't ask it. She lay in the dark on the other side of the house and waited for something she couldn't name. He never came. He had her name on his phone. Picked it up 3 times. Put it down 3 times. What was he about to confess, and why did the truth scare him more than the accident that broke him? He started watching her differently. Not from windows. Not through glass and distance and the comfortable lie that he was simply observing his own property. He watched her the way you watch something you have already decided is a problem, close, deliberate, looking for the evidence that would confirm what you suspected. He found the opposite. Thursday morning, she was in the East Garden before 6. He knew because the security feed timestamp told him. He had not gone looking for it, he told himself. He had simply been reviewing overnight logs when the image appeared. She was on the phone, pacing. Slow, tight circles, the way people pace when the conversation is heavy and the body needs to process what the mind is carrying. He couldn't hear her. Didn't need to. He watched her stop mid-pace. Watched something land on her face. Not grief exactly. Something older than grief. The particular expression of someone absorbing news they had already prepared themselves for and finding that preparation meant nothing. She hung up, stood very still. Then she looked up at the sky, the same way she had in the rain, that same gesture, like the sky was the only thing large enough to hold what she was feeling. 30 seconds. She went back inside. By 7, she was at the breakfast table with her case file open. Coffee beside her, face giving nothing away. He came in at 7:15. She looked up, gave him the nod. He sat down. The silence between them was the same as always, except he was watching her now. Not from a distance, not through glass. Across a table. 4 feet of space and 95 days of carefully constructed nothing between them. She had received difficult news this morning. She was sitting here anyway, working, steady, giving nothing to the room that the room hadn't earned. He opened his mouth, closed it, picked up his coffee. Don't. Sue appeared in the doorway. Sir. The 7:30 call. Push it. Sue blinked. Sir. Push it an hour. His voice was even, deliberate. He didn't look at Sue. I'm not done with breakfast. He had barely touched breakfast. Ria didn't look up from her file. But the corner of her mouth, just the corner, barely, almost nothing moved. He pushed a call for a woman he claims to hate. She noticed, said nothing, but she noticed. He hates her, but he just delayed a $1 million call to sit across from a woman he pretends not to see. What exactly is Kim Ji afraid will happen the moment he finally looks up? He heard her at 2 a.m. Not a sound exactly. More like the absence of sound changing. The particular stillness of a house shifting when someone inside it is trying very hard not to be heard. He was already awake. He was always already awake at 2 a.m. Had been since the accident. Since the nights in the rehabilitation facility when the dark had too much space in it and his body had become a place he didn't recognize, and sleep had stopped feeling like rest and started feeling like surrender. He wheeled to his doorway, listened. The kitchen light was on. He could see it under the corridor door, thin, yellow, the specific warmth of a light turned on for function, not comfort. He heard nothing. Then he heard everything. She was crying. Not loudly. That was the thing that stopped him completely. It wasn't the performance of crying, wasn't the kind that wanted to be found. It was the other kind. The kind you do with your hand pressed to your mouth in someone else's kitchen at 2 a.m. because the feeling got too large for the room you were assigned and you had nowhere else to put it. Kim Ji stayed in the doorway. Don't. He went in anyway. She heard the door, turned, and for one unguarded second, before the composure came back, before the sharp, intelligent eyes recalibrated and the mask resettled, he saw her, really saw her, not the lawyer, not the wife he hadn't chosen, not the woman he had spent 97 days constructing a careful hatred around, just her, Ria. Sitting on the kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet and her knees pulled up and her face completely open in the way faces only go when they believe nobody is watching. She wiped her face, looked at him, looked at the floor. "I'm sorry." Her voice was steady, almost. "I didn't mean to. Don't apologize." She looked up. His voice had come out differently than he intended. Not cold. Not the controlled flatness he had spent 2 years perfecting. Something underneath it had surfaced without permission. Rough, unpolished. The voice of a man who had not spoken honestly in a very long time and had forgotten what it cost. He moved further into the kitchen. Stopped beside her. The floor. She was on the floor and he was in his chair, and for once the distance between them had nothing to do with choice. He reached past her, opened the cabinet she was leaning against, took out 2 glasses, filled them both with water, set one beside her, didn't speak, didn't leave. Ria looked at the glass for a long...
"Please, take this. It might help."
I can't. It hurts too much.
"Just a sip. I'm here for you."
Okay. Thank you.
moment. Then she picked it up, drank, set it down carefully like it was something that mattered. The kitchen was very quiet. "The call this morning," she said finally, not looking at him. "My mother." He said nothing, waited. "She's sick." 2 words. Flat. The flatness of someone who has been holding something heavy for so long their arms have stopped shaking. "Has been for a while. She stopped. "I thought I had more time." Kim Ji looked at her, at the side of her face, the line of her jaw, the way she was holding herself together with nothing but sheer will and the particular dignity of a woman who had learned early that the world did not pause for her pain. He had watched her for 97 days and called it suspicion. He understood now with a clarity that was almost violent that it had never been suspicion. He had been watching her because she was the only person in his life who had never once asked him for anything. Not sympathy, not access, not the version of himself he no longer was. She just existed, in his home, on the kitchen floor, crying quietly at 2 a.m. with enough dignity to make him feel ashamed of every cold sentence he had ever aimed at her. He opened his mouth. Something true almost came out. He closed it, set his own glass down. "Drink the water," he said quietly. She almost smiled. Not quite, but almost. He got the water. He stayed. He didn't leave and he didn't have to. So why is a man who hates her the only one who showed up at 2 a.m. when she broke?
I don't know how to go on.
One day at a time, I'm right here with you.
It hurts so much.
I know. We'll face it together.
Thank you for being here.
Always.
He didn't sleep after that. Not unusual. What was unusual was why. Before, every sleepless night before Chapter 5's 2 a.m. had been about the accident. About the specific cruelty of lying in a body that had been decided for him by someone else's choice. About the gap between who he had been and what he had become and the silence that lived permanently in that gap. Tonight was different. Tonight he kept seeing her face. That one unguarded second before the composure returned. The way she had looked. Not weak, that was the thing that wouldn't leave him, not weak at all. just human. Just a person feeling something too large for a kitchen at 2 a.m. who hadn't had anywhere else to put it. He had sat with her for 40 minutes. He had counted. Neither of them had spoken again after drink the water. They had just existed in the same space without the architecture of distance between them. Without the careful choreography of a man who had spent 3 months designing a life inside his own home that excluded her completely. It had felt like the most honest 40 minutes he had spent in 2 years. That was the thing that kept him awake. Morning came gray and quiet. He was already at his desk when she came past the study doorway at 6:45. She didn't look in. She never looked in, had learned early that his study was a boundary and had respected it without being told twice, which was more than he could say for people who had known him for decades. He watched the empty doorway after she passed, picked up his phone. Mother is sick. Has been for a while. He pulled up his contacts, found his personal physician, not the company doctor, his own, the one who owed him 3 favors and asked no questions. Typed a message. Need a referral. Best specialist in the country for... He stopped. He didn't know what she was sick with. He hadn't asked. He sat with that for a moment. The particular shame of realizing you were trying to fix something for someone you hadn't bothered to understand yet. He deleted the message. Got up. Wheeled to the corridor. She was in the kitchen, standing at the stove, back to him, making something that smelled like it required patience. Her hair was down. He had only seen it down twice before, both times late at night when she didn't know anyone was looking. She didn't hear him approach. He stopped in the doorway, watched her. She was humming, barely, just under her breath, the ghost of a melody he didn't recognize. Something she was doing without deciding to. Something that belonged to whoever she was before this house and this marriage and his 97 days of constructed silence. Who are you? Not an accusation this time. A real question. The kind that had been building quietly beneath everything else. Beneath the anger and the suspicion and the file he had read and the witness statement that connected her to the worst night of his life. Who are you and why does it feel like I've been trying not to know? Ria. She turned. Found him in the doorway. Neither close nor far, the middle distance he always kept. She waited. He looked at her face in the gray morning light, open, composed, giving him nothing he hadn't earned. What is she sick with? Ria was very still for a moment. Cardiac, she said quietly. They found it 8 months ago. 8 months ago. 2 months before their marriage was arranged. He held that information in the space between them and felt the shape of it change everything he thought he had understood about why she was here. She hadn't come for his money. She had come because she was running out of time. Eat breakfast first, he said. She blinked. Sorry. Before you go to work. His voice was controlled. Almost. Eat first. He turned his chair, went back to his study, closed the door. Sat in the silence with the wreckage of a narrative he had built around a woman he had never once actually looked at. Until now. She didn't come for his money. She came because she was running out of time and he just figured it out. So why is the man who hated her now the only one quietly trying to save her? He made one phone call at 7:15. Not to Sue. Not to the board. Not to any of the 17 people whose entire professional existence depended on being his first call in the morning. He called his personal physician. I need the best cardiac specialist in the country. His voice was the same as always, flat, precise, the voice of a man making a business decision. Private. Discreet. Today. Kim G. That's a difficult timeline for today. A pause. I'll make it happen. He hung up, sat with what he had just done for exactly 4 seconds, then opened his morning reports and didn't think about it again. Ria found out at 11. Not from him. He had been careful, had routed everything through his physician, had made sure his name was nowhere on the referral, had constructed the whole thing to look like a hospital initiative, a routine outreach, Nothing that pointed back to a man sitting in a study who had told himself he felt nothing. But the physician's receptionist, young, efficient, slightly too proud of the access she had mentioned in passing that the referral had come from a private source close to the family. Ria was a lawyer. She had built a career on pulling threads. She pulled this one in under 6 minutes. She sat at her desk with the name of Kim Ji's personal physician on her screen and the referral timestamp, 7:15 a.m., 12 minutes after he had told her to eat breakfast, and she felt something move through her that she didn't have a category for. He had done it before she left the kitchen, before she had even finished her coffee. He hadn't mentioned it, hadn't framed it as generosity or leverage or the action of a man who expected something in return. He had simply done it, quietly, in the dark of his own privacy where nobody was supposed to find it. Like the bowl, she closed her laptop, looked at the wall in front of her for a long time. This was the most dangerous thing that had happened in 101 days. Not his coldness, not his silence, not the 41 sentences or the architectural distance or the hatred she had learned to navigate like furniture in a dark room. A man doing something good and hiding it. That was the thing that broke people open. She knew because she felt it happening. They were in the same room at 6. Not by design. She came in for water, he was already there. Neither of them retreated because retreating would have meant acknowledging that the room had changed and neither of them was ready to do that yet. He was at the window, back to her. She filled her glass. The silence was different now. Not the silence of distance. The silence of two people standing on opposite sides of something thin. Something that had been thick and solid and reliable 101 days ago and had been quietly, without permission, worn down to almost nothing. Kim Ji. He didn't turn. Thank you. For seconds. 5. I don't know what you're referring to. Ria looked at the back of his head, at the rigid line of his shoulders, at the careful stillness of a man holding himself together with both hands. I know, she said quietly. She left the glass on the counter, walked out. In the corridor she stopped, pressed her back against the wall, closed her eyes. Don't. Her own voice now, her own warning, because Ria had a secret that made his cardiac referral look like nothing. A secret that connected her to the worst night of his life. A secret that meant every soft thing growing in the space between them was growing on ground that hadn't been honest yet. And the closer he got, the more it was going to cost her when he found out. He hid it. She found it in 6 minutes. Neither of them said what it meant. But what happens when he discovers the secret she's been carrying? Is the reason he's in that chair? It was raining again. Of course it was. Kim Ji had stopped believing in coincidence 2 years ago, had replaced it with pattern recognition, with the cold mathematics of cause and effect that had made him the most dangerous man in every room he entered. Everything meant something. Everything pointed somewhere. The rain meant nothing. He told himself that. She was leaving. Not the house. Not the marriage, not yet. She was leaving for the hospital. Her mother had been admitted that afternoon. The cardiac specialist had moved fast, had found something that couldn't wait, had used words on the phone that Ria had written down in her notepad in her precise, careful handwriting because writing things down was how she stayed standing when the ground moved. Kim Ji knew all of this because Sue had told him, because he had asked Sue to tell him. He hadn't examined that yet. He watched from the corridor as she moved through the entrance hall. Coat on, bag over her shoulder, that particular efficiency of a woman who had learned to carry crisis without letting it carry her. She was on the phone, speaking quietly, her voice steady in the way it was always steady when everything underneath it was anything but. She hadn't told him. That was the thing. 103 days in his home. He had made her one phone call that changed her mother's access to care, and she had thanked him with 2 words and a glass left on the counter. And she hadn't told him about the admission. Hadn't knocked on his study door. Hadn't asked for anything. She never asked for anything. He was in the corridor before he decided to be. Ria. She turned, phone still in hand, rain audible through the door behind her. Her eyes, those sharp, careful, devastating eyes, found him in the corridor and did what they always did. Waited, gave him nothing he hadn't earned. I'll take you. Silence. Not the familiar silence of distance. Something newer. Something that didn't have a name yet because it had never existed between them before. You don't have to. I know. She looked at him for a long moment. He looked back. This was the first time in 103 days that neither of them looked away first. No retreat. No constructed distance. No carefully maintained architecture of hatred keeping them on opposite sides of the same house. Just two people standing in a corridor in the rain sound, seeing each other. She nodded. Once. They left together. The hospital corridor was white and long and smelled like every hospital corridor in every country. Antiseptic and waiting and the particular anxiety of people who have come to terms with how little control they actually have. Kim Ji had not been in a hospital since rehabilitation. He had not planned to return. He was here anyway. Ria came out of her mother's room after 40 minutes. Sat down in the chair beside him. Not across from him, beside him, the closest she had voluntarily placed herself in 103 days, and said nothing for a long time. He said nothing either. The corridor hummed around them. Nurses. Footsteps. The distant sound of a monitor doing its steady mechanical work. She's stable, Ria said finally. For now. He nodded. She looked at her hands in her lap. At the notepad she was still holding. The one with the words she had written down because writing kept her standing. He could see the edge of it. Could see her handwriting, precise, architectural, the handwriting of a woman who thought in straight lines even when everything around her was curved. He could see two words at the top of the page. Just two. His case number. The same case number. His case number, the one connected to the accident, to the night, to the witness statement in the file he had read 3 weeks ago and hadn't been able to put down since. Kim Ji went very still. Ria hadn't noticed him looking. She was staring at the wall, processing, somewhere else entirely. He looked at the notepad, at the case number, at her handwriting wrapped around the worst night of his life like she had been carrying it, like she had always been carrying it. The corridor tilted slightly, not physically, something interior, the particular sensation of a foundation shifting, of everything you constructed on top of an assumption beginning to lean in a direction you cannot stop. She knows. Not she found out recently. Not she stumbled across something. She had known. Before the marriage. Before the house. Before the 41 sentences and the empty bowl and the 2 a.m. kitchen floor and the cardiac referral and the rain and this corridor and this moment. She had known. And she had said nothing. And she had protected it. And he looked at her profile. At the woman sitting beside him in a hospital corridor holding his entire truth in a notepad on her lap and staring at a wall like she was trying to decide something she had been deciding for a very long time. He opened his mouth. The question was right there. 3 words. Were you there? Ria turned. Found him looking at her, really looking, the kind of looking that had no distance in it, no construction, no hatred, no careful architecture of protection between his face and his actual face. She saw it. Saw that he knew. Saw that he was one question away from everything changing forever. Her eyes didn't run. Didn't perform innocence. Didn't give him the composure she gave every other room in every other moment. She just looked back. And in that look was everything. The answer. The secret. The reason. The night. All of it. Sitting between them in a hospital corridor in the rain. In the space between a question he hadn't asked yet and an answer she had been rehearsing for 14 months. His phone rang. Sue. The name lit up the screen between them like an interruption from a world that didn't know it had just walked into the most important moment of two people's lives. Kim Ji looked at the phone. Looked at her. Don't answer it, her eyes said. Or maybe that was what he needed them to say. Maybe he was already so far gone that he was reading her silence like a language he had always spoken but never admitted to knowing. He looked back at the phone. It rang, and the question stayed in his mouth. 3 words, unasked, the most important 3 words of his life sitting right at the edge of a moment that could not be taken back. Were you there? The screen goes dark. He saw the case number. She saw him see it. And nobody said a single word. Part 2 is coming, because what happens when he finally asks the question will destroy everything you thought the story was about.